Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Reimagine v13. Really excited to be talking this time about Parachains, interoperability, and the Polkadot ecosystem at large. I'm your host, Roshan Mirajkar from the MouseBelt team, and today our panel will be discussing scaling value across chains. So before we get started, I want to give a chance to meet all of our great guests and have them introduce themselves. So we'll start with you, Eric.
Yeah, thanks, Roshan. And great to be here. I'm the head of strategic growth projects at Parity Technologies. Parity is the company that is the main development company currently behind the Polkadot ecosystem and behind Substrate, the SDK that's used to build Parachains currently. My role at Parity basically consists of bringing high-value strategic projects into completion. And I was also, I used to be in charge of ecosystem development around the Polkadot launch time. Great to meet you all.
Yeah, awesome. And Sota, you can go next.
Yep. Thank you very much for having me today. My name is Sota Watanabe. I'm founder of Astar Network. Astar Network is one of the first parachain on Polkadot. And this is a smart contract platform supporting Ethereum virtual machine and WebAssembly. And we have a bunch of DeFi project, NFT project on the top of Astar and interacting with other parachain right now. Yeah, thank you for having me today.
Awesome. And we'll have you, Galen, next.
Oh, hi, I'm Galen. I do engineering at MouseBelt. We're helping to build the ICE network, which is a parachain on Polkadot.
Awesome. And lastly, Thibault.
Hey, Roshan. Hi, guys. Nice being on the panel today. I head business strategy at Bifrost Finance. Substrate developed Web3 staking liquidity derivative protocol on Kusama and now Polkadot. And yeah, happy to be here today and to speak to you guys more about Bifrost and why we've decided to go on Polkadot.
Yeah, excited to have you all here. And yeah, let's sort of get into the discussion with the first question. I'll turn it over to you, Eric. Can you kind of break down, why did you and your team choose to build on Polkadot's infrastructure? What makes it more unique than some of the other layer one blockchains out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't really comment too much on the first part of the question since we, I guess, developed the Polkadot protocol itself primarily and not a specific parachain or a specific application as much. But in terms of uniqueness about Polkadot, I think generally when I talk to teams, there's a few things that I pitch, but I would say it would be the combination of three things. And I think without any one of these things, it wouldn't really make Polkadot the unique thing it is today. So it would be a combination of Substrate as an SDK. It would be shared security as well as the cross-chain messaging protocol. So basically, the way we envisioned it is we really wanted an easy way for developers to be able to build blockchains easily, as well as kind of configure it to the way they want for their specific use case. So Substrate was kind of developed to really kind of streamline the developer onboarding experience and make building a blockchain, which is significantly harder still than building an application, as easy as possible with programming languages that they understand from the Web2 space. And then once they kind of onboard that into a parachain, then the shared security and messaging protocol comes in. So basically, there's multiple blockchain networks out there today that have various abilities to message between blockchain, but none of them have kind of the same shared security capabilities that we have at Polkadot. So the idea is that with shared security, that's kind of the only way you can really guarantee that all of these messages are kind of as successful as possible, that everything is functioning as a whole unit. Because without this feature, it's very difficult to kind of guarantee that if one blockchain sends a message to another, that blockchain A will still be, that blockchain B can fully trust all the messages from blockchain A because it doesn't necessarily trust security in blockchain A. So I think that these are kind of very difficult concepts to understand altogether. And that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of developers haven't quite wrapped their head around it. But if we kind of took a time to kind of deep dive around these questions, a lot of the developers begin to kind of see the I guess the powers of Polkadot in a sense. I hope that answers the question pretty well.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the standardization of everything that happens in the relay chain, and we can get into what specifically, people are building in the Parachain is pretty important. I'll turn it over to you next, Thibault, if you have any thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, sure. Excuse me. Yeah, I think, going on from Eric, I think fundamentally why we've decided to go with Polkadot was perhaps because of I think at early stage, I think the whole idea of the ecology consensus mechanism in the form of nested relays and shards was obviously something important. And obviously the aspect of sharding, splitting up the work that happens onto multiple sub blockchains, the Parachain is very, vital. And I think, the heterogeneous nature of that in the context that, blockchains have their own state transition function, and then it's purpose built, which is something we'll speak after about, the specific use cases is obviously something which we found was obviously very important. And continuing on that, the security mechanism behind that, with the relay chain is obviously vital. At the same time, another aspect we did consider when building sort of Bifrost and why we decided to go with Polkadot was also the customized development and iterations of substrate framework, which really much attracted us to that. There's obviously the composability nature of it, sort of the memory efficiency of substrate and the simplicity of it. These were sort of the two aspects which we really considered on our ends.
Definitely. And Sota, do you have any thoughts here?
Yeah, when I joined the Polkadot space back in 2019, the Ethereum was the biggest or main blockchain. Ethereum is main blockchain right now, but I believe multi-chain future. In Polkadot, you have very sophisticated architecture, as everyone says. But the Polkadot relay chain, the heart of the Polkadot, does not support smart contract functionality by design. So Polkadot ecosystem and all developers who would like to make dApps on the top of Polkadot need a Parachain that supports smart contract. And when it comes to smart contract, we have two virtual machines, WebAssembly and Ethereum virtual machine. And this is the reason why we started making smart contract Parachain, which support EVM and also WebAssembly. So in terms of the developer, there is two choices, making Parachain or deploying dApps on the top of a Parachain. I think at this moment, the second option is much easier for developers. So smart contract hub is necessary for the mass adoption. So this is why we started making Astar in a Polkadot ecosystem.
Yeah, smart contracts are definitely essential. And I'll move to you, Galen, for kind of the next topic in question, which is interoperability. So do you think that EVM is the operating system of the future, or what are some advantages building with the Parachain? What are some advantages building on a Parachain offers?
So yeah, I mean, I think smart contracts are largely right now written on EVMs, and they will probably be written on EVMs, maybe some WASM in the future. But Parachains offer like a really good way for maybe some purpose-driven specific blockchain to communicate with them, to do some action, send it to an EVM to process. We may see another smart contract platform in the future than the EVM, where we see like a lot of smart contract deploys on it. But this was actually one reason why ICE was created in the first place. Icon had tried to create its own VM, its own set of tooling, way for creating smart contracts. And there was just so much prior art with the EVM. There was so much tooling there and just documentation and everything. It's what the developers know right now. These things can be pretty sticky, but we may see another one in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good way to think about it. And Thibault, I'll move to you next. Do you sort of think Parachains, is it more about commercialization or specialization of these individual Parachains?
Yeah, sure. I think there are two aspects there. I think obviously the specialization nature is important in order to sort of grow an economy. And in in an ecosystem like Polkadot and Kusama, we're starting to see that now with, obviously, as Sota mentioned, with XCM being live. There's utility amongst parachains which have specific specificities which are quite interesting. The commercialization about it, tongue twister there. I think that will come. We're starting to see a lot of projects who have obtained Polkadot parachains, for example, recently with Origin Trails and stuff. They have a commercial sort of background, Web 2 background, and they're making their transition into Web 3. So they have sort of an off-chain, if you like, presence, and they're going on-chain. And we're starting to see sort of perhaps more mass adoption from these different players. But I think the specialization nature of these different parachains is obviously key in terms of use cases and for the future.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I'll move to you, Eric. Do you sort of feel the same, or what are some of the incentives for, I don't know, parachains to collaborate with each other, or maybe there are incentives to not?
Yeah, I think right now, between application-specific chains and more commercial kind of platforms, if that's how I interpret your question, I think currently the adoption narrative is still a little bit towards the platform side. And I think there's a few reasons for that in the Polkadot space, as well as abroad. Generally speaking, there's a pretty strong narrative, I would say, in the market towards layer ones in general. And just somebody like Astar right now has, I guess, some sort of advantage in terms of onboarding dApps and users into their platform versus maybe right now a purely application-focused chain. But I think that could change a little bit in the future. And also, I think in terms of just technical development of Polkadot, XCM hasn't really been available until recently. So kind of a lot of these composability functions of Polkadot weren't really fully available until less than a month ago or so. So some of these application-specific chains that were launched were still siloed, as well as these application-specific chains, I guess, just were developed and launched a little bit later than some of the other parachains within the ecosystem. So for example, the first 3 parachain slot winners were all large commercial, more commercially focused platforms that supported sometimes EVM and sometimes WASM and EVM in Astar's case, for example. And I think the second question you mentioned, can you repeat the second part of your question again?
Yeah, so I was asking you, is it more, do you believe there's incentives for parachains to sort of work together, collaborate, or are there incentives not to do so and kind of be the leader, be better than one parachain or the other?
I think there's definitely incentives for parachains to collaborate because there's a lot of applications within these parachains, within, let's say, a platform parachain that would benefit strongly from, I guess, some of the liquidity or some of the use cases from an application-specific chain. And I think they're generally wise enough, and such every builder in the ecosystem generally supports interoperability and composability to a large extent. So as a result, I think they're going to want to kind of seek bridges, or not bridges, but seek to kind of create messages between their chain as well as these application-specific chains.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And on that topic, I'll move to you next, Sota. If you want to talk about what types of new use cases for developers or builders will XCM enable?
Yeah, XCM is definitely one of the most important feature on Polkadot has. And some of the parachain like Astar or Moonbeam, Akala, Parallel, and Statement already activated XCM, meaning we can transfer dot token from relay chain to parachain. And in the future, we can transfer asset between parachains. So one of the example we can consider is using AUSD, which is issued on Akala and stablecoin, using AUSD on our DeFi platform, like lending or DEX, or maybe adding AUSD token on our collateral in our DeFi, like stablecoin or something like that. So yeah, the essence is it is trustless bridge. So when it comes to bridge, there are a lot of the hacks, and still there are a lot of the risk to use centralized bridge. But XCM is fully trustless, so it's gonna be much easier for us to bring dot token from relay chain to Parachain, or other Parachains token from other Parachain to Astar. And one of the things we would like to do is to bring as many dots as possible and as many Parachains token as possible from relay chain Parachain to Astar, so that it's gonna be much easier for new developer to create new use case on Astar. So this is what we would like to do. And I'm really excited to activate more XCM channel.
Yeah,
more specifically HRMT channel, but HRMT is a little bit technical, so I'm saying XCM.
Yeah, for sure. People are starting to understand that. And I think, yeah, as you standardize it, hopefully we see more parachains working together. Galen, I'll go to you next for this one. Kind of conceptually, what are some use cases that you see kind of multi-chain applications being better suited at than, I don't know, centralized applications, things like stable coins, you know, like a multi-chain stable coin versus the centralized stable coins that are still prevalent in our industry right now?
You could have a certain chain with properties that make it good for something like a video game, and you want to use your in-game assets and you want to speculate with them or trade them on some chain that's more suited for like financial use cases, or you might have a chain that's used to help construct a derivative and another one that's used to trade it. I think there's a lot of possibility for people to, you know, have chains that are very specialized and get applications on them that are very specialized in a particular type of thing, and do what they're very good at and send the output of it to another chain that's good at maybe speculating with it, trading with it, leveraging it somehow.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a shift between, you know, general purpose versus each of these things actually has a specific purpose. I really like that part. Thibault, I'll go to you next. Maybe tell us a little bit about what are some of the benefits between, you know, having cross-chain liquidity when it comes to things like DeFi and staking. Like, are these the best use cases you think for multi-chain applications?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I mean, just to give you a bit of a context for the, you know, the panel as well as the, you know, the listeners here. What we're looking to build here at Bifrost is basically we're trying to provide standardized liquid staking derivatives for dots, Kusama chains, you know, parallel chains, and heterogeneous chains, and then, you know, broader ecosystem. So obviously cross-chain for us is obviously key. Now, what we're looking to do there is, you know, we're looking at each sort of different standardized derivatives can be traded and can, you know, generate loans to each other. So the liquidity, the security, as well as the standardization of these liquid staking derivatives are there.
Eric, I'll move to you next. Maybe do you want to talk from Parity's angle? Like, how does a lot of the technological advancements drive a lot of the use cases that we're seeing?
So I think right now, that's a really good question. I need to think about that a little bit. So I think in terms of technological advancements in the, like, for example, on parachain functionality, or for example, on XCM and such being launched, I think right now Polkadot is still at the phase currently of fulfilling a lot of the promises that it kind of outlined in its white paper back 5 years ago or so. So right now, I think it's actually just enabling these base use cases of, let's say, Bifrost and Astar, or Bifrost and ICE, for example, working together. And I think that, like, right now, I think it's kind of enabling, in general, application-specific chains to talk to platforms, as well as different platform chains to talk to each other. And this is kind of like the current key milestone that we're seeing at the moment.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a constant development. I'll jump back to you, Thibault, if you want to talk a little bit about, you know, we were just discussing how does some of the technological advancements in like the Polkadot ecosystem drive a lot of the use cases. from your angle, have you seen a lot of these advancements, like, I don't know, benefiting more retail investors, or is it the institutions that can benefit from this?
Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. I have VPN issues based on where I'm from. No, I think, well, in terms of what we're looking to do, I think, standardization and obviously the liquidity aspects to providing, decentralized, standardized derivatives is key. And obviously from a technology standpoint, that will obviously help in terms of, XCM as well there. We're looking to make derivatives sort of take place with the help of XCM. Now, in terms of your question about mass adoption and retail, I think the problem we have here, at least for on our case, I would say there's an adoption problem in terms of education, which is clear, key. That obviously is part of my job there as well in terms of strategy for the business, but also engaging with the retail to make them understand sort of use cases. But also in terms of our product, we are still building out a utility. XCM has been live for a month. We are still opening sort of our HRMP channels with different teams. We've just recently obtained Polkadot slot. So there are a few things there which require a few sort of technology sort of advancements there. On the institutional side, I think frankly pretty much the same on our ends. There's a utility aspect there as well. I mean, we're looking to build out standardized derivatives which obviously bear their primary function, but we want to drive utility. And I think that goes to Sota's point earlier, where I think things are only building out now, and in order to have real impact within the ecosystems and with sort of collaborative intentions amongst parachains, utility currently does have some sort of technical roadblocks for adoption.
Totally, and we can cover some of those things a little later down the talk about some answers to some of those things. But Sota, what do you think from your view? How does the technology influence some of the things that you're building?
Yeah, so technology I'm really excited about on Polkadot. Yeah, got it. So one of the things I'm really excited about is obviously XCM, as everybody said, and also WebAssembly in the Polkadot environment. So right now, Ethereum virtual machine is the only one virtual machine Polkadot supports commercially. So we can say Polkadot is another EVM chain right now. And that's why EVM use case on the top of Moonbeam, on the top of Astar is getting popular and popular. But as far as I know, the WebAssembly was the original virtual machine for Polkadot. I mean, should have been supported from day one. But it turns out that contract size of the WebAssembly contract is too big to be deployed. And Parity technology is working really hard to optimize WebAssembly smart contract. And once it is supported on Shiden, which is our testnet, and Astar in Q3, I think this is going to change the landscape of the smart contract in a Polkadot ecosystem, because having WebAssembly is very necessary for unlocking Web3 for Web2 developer. The WebAssembly is built by Google, Microsoft, Amazon, and such a big companies. And we can use a lot of the languages like Rust, Go, C++, and the other language, the common languages in a Web2 space. And they can write smart contract for WebAssembly development. But the Ethereum virtual machine is for Ethereum developer, I would say. So Solidity and Viper can be compiled to EVM. So what we would like to do is having Ethereum virtual machine as well as WebAssembly. And I think we will be recognized as a WebAssembly parachain in a long run. And WebAssembly is the things I'm really excited about in coming months.
Yeah, no, it's good to hear like technologies that have been around for a long time. I've heard a lot of people just at this Polkadot event that we're doing talk about wanting to use those existing technologies, and then as they get familiar, like bridge them over and then help them realize the benefits of using something like Polkadot.
Yeah.
I'll go to you, Galen, kind of shifting into a different topic, but maybe if you just want to finish this one off. So like on the angle of adoption, what do you think the incentives are for developers to develop on Parachains? And what's kind of needed to get more developers, like attract them with maybe proper incentives if there aren't any already?
Well, to get developers to build on Parachains, I guess right now there's a lot of just application specific chains, and they're very similar to each other. I think oftentimes they can compete by offering developers money if there's not strong differentiation. There are some, though, that do actually have pretty good differentiation, and they do have things that they offer to developers. So if they offer a really good cross-chain bridge, or they offer like primitives for building applications, or they have some unique piece of their network that lets developers do something very easily or very well, I think they can bring developers who want to do that type of thing. So I guess it probably depends on the type of the developer, how they would try and do that.
And what type of approach do you think works best? Like, I've seen some people talk about, existing developers that already know EVM, what things like Moonbeam kind of fitting in the middle there, or do you think there's a world where not just new developers, but new people might learn about Parachains first?
Yeah, I think certainly people could learn about Parachains first. There's a massive amount of information and community around developing for the EVM. There are well-published standards like Open Zeppelin when someone's trying to do a contract for a particular thing and make sure it's safe. There's just a lot of resources. So if you think about what someone might try and do first, there's just a lot less friction towards starting with what there are many resources for. But I do think as other approaches gain just a larger community, more documentation, more resources, more of a following, I think we'll start to see people kind of trickle towards those as well. For a new developer in particular, I think if the way they learned is on a parachain, or they want to do something that a parachain does particularly well, they might try that over what's a little easier.
100%. There's a lot of things still left to build. And I'll move to you, Eric, now, if you want to talk maybe from your angle. Like, I heard you talk about, shared security model, things like that, some benefits. So maybe do you want to outline, like, what are some benefits for developers or anyone building on Polkadot or just using like, Parity's SDK is this benefits specifically around security, and is there room, like, can they focus more on innovation rather than worrying about all the other problems that are very prevalent out there in like DeFi and the regular crypto ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one of the key things that Substrate as a SDK enables is, and I think you're alluding to this in a way too, is the modularity of Substrate. So basically, one of the things I oftentimes pitch development teams and just general crypto builders is that when they kind of build a chain on Substrate, they can easily choose, for example, what consensus mechanism they want, what kind of block production mechanism they want, and basically a whole bunch of other features. Like, for example, like, do they want to include a stablecoin? Like, do they want to include off-chain workers? All of those kind of stuff, right? They can kind of easily mix and match the features they want from stuff that other builders have kind of already built, and then kind of assemble them together in a way to build their own chain. So in that sense, it streamlines development quite a bit. And in addition, I think, to a lot of the technical aspects that we see on Substrate, I think there's also a lot of non-technical support kind of available in the ecosystem, whether it's through Parity or through various parachain builders that kind of want to improve the ecosystem. So for example, like if they build in the Polkadot ecosystem or with Substrate, maybe they could qualify in a sense if they use Akala USD for the AUSD $250 million fund as an example, right? So just developers should be aware that beyond just what is technically great about Substrate, there's also a whole ecosystem out there that kind of could support their endeavor.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
great.
also
Go ahead.
Can I ask a question? Can I answer the question? Yeah, basically the substrate is, yes, thank you very much. The substrate is very customizable and very flexible. And we already created the incentive mechanism, and we call it dApps staking palette. And we invented build to earn concept. So developer is our main customer because we are making smart contract hub. But developer is the most precious resource in a blockchain space. But they are paying a lot of the cost when they deploy smart contract, when they make transaction. And influencers and sharers are getting a lot of the money over developers. So blockchain is all about incentive, but the incentive design here is completely broken because most important people are paying a lot of the cost. So we invented dApps staking palette on Substrate, and we have a build to earn concept. So we distribute basic income from block rewards to developer based on the performance. Then this is going to be a basic income for developers. They have to pay cost when they deploy smart contract, but based on their contribution to the network, they can get basic income from block rewards. So we made it, we could make it because Substrate is very customizable and Substrate is very flexible. So this is very original and created by Astar, and the probably world will realize the power of the build to earn concept later this year.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that, and you're totally right. Haven't heard many people in like Ethereum community kind of bring that up. Like, yeah, it is the developers, and maybe more of the Ethereum developers like need to complain about how much fees they're paying and things like that. Thibault, I'll move to you next. If you want to talk about from your angle, like community angle or even dApp usage, are there any specific incentives that you try to push more? Or you think it's easier just to get adoption on regular people like using these apps because they don't really understand the technology, but they might understand the benefits it gives them?
Yeah, most definitely. I think on our end, we initially had the slot auction liquidity protocol, which allowed sort of basic retail to be able to participate in crowd alerts via our protocol in order to get liquid DOT or liquid Kusama. Rather than being locked for the crowdland period. So I think that was a sort of an easy entry for those types of users. Now, what we're looking forward now with our recently launched staking liquidity protocol, we're working closely with different parachain teams to ensure that the staking liquidity derivatives, which we're collaborating with with these different parachains. Firstly, there's a very close relationship with the parachain team. So there's a fully built sort of scoped out collaboration process which is there. Such that both the underlying projects building on top of these sort of different parachains, as well as the community and the users are able to sort of really benefit from the value of what we're trying to create. So I think once again the main point here is on the technical side, we're still being quite patient in terms of what can be done with different teams, in terms of HRMP openings, and then there's a utility aspect again. So I think there's close collaboration, which is great in the Polkadot Kusama ecosystem, in terms of everybody sort of benefiting in that way and having to sort of cross collaborate where communities can really partake in these different sort of collaborations. But then on the other side, there still is a roadblock in terms of utility, which we're still working on very closely. And I think as soon as sort of XCM fully takes light, we can really benefit from that, and then adoption can sort of trigger on from that.
Yeah, and while you were talking, I just briefly want to touch kind of just an open-ended question. Does anyone on this panel know of any like resources or hubs that you recommend? I think you guys already mentioned some for developers, but yeah, are there anything you guys recommend, or do you guys think there needs to exist more resources dedicated? Is it to education or usability? I'll just leave it open if anyone wants to answer.
Yeah, I think I'll be quick. I think on our ends, given that we're doing staking liquidity derivatives, perhaps to the retail user, maybe not crypto native, there's a lot of education that has to take place there, because there's obviously a technical aspect to the actual product, but also to the Polkadot and Kusama, sort of architecture and how that works with the parachains. So we're looking to be more educational on that front in terms of breaking down sort of complexities behind the technicality and the utility, such that they understand sort of the whole mechanism behind it. So that takes a lot of time on that front, just in terms of direct contact with the community and users.
Yeah, the technology is developing, of course, but we might still need education. Does anyone else have thoughts here before we move to the final question?
Yeah, I definitely think Polkadot as a concept and as a technology could be educated better within kind of Parity. And I know our friends at Web3 Foundation as well are really trying to ramp up their, I guess, education initiatives kind of within the company. So for example, a bunch of lecture series that certain people might give from within these organizations are kind of being planned right now as just as an example, as well as a whole host of other things, a bunch of hackathons, etc., where we kind of really want to kind of in 2022 start educating people a little bit more about Polkadot and how it works.
100%. That's great to know. And yeah, I'll move to the last question. It's a little bit open-ended, but kind of just looking toward the future. So I'll preface this a bit with, just from at this event, doing all these talks, we've seen Polkadot being prevalent at Davos this year. There's been a lot of talk, not only with governments, but just looking out, right? Like what will be the actual architecture that Web3 or NFTs and so on will be built on? I don't think the answer is fully there, but if each of you want to talk a little bit about, what can we expect for the future, and what could a world look like where a lot of these technologies, Web3 technologies, are being built more and more on chains like Polkadot? Maybe I'll start with you, Thibault.
Yeah, definitely. I think in terms of the future, I mean, quite difficult one, but something which Sota mentioned before about a cross-chain future, that's obviously key. On our ends, very briefly, we are obviously trying to ensure that cross-chain interoperability is key through XCM. So that will obviously bring far more benefits to everybody within Polkadot. But in the future, obviously, cross-chain standardization on that front, and I think an ease as well in terms of UI as well. We're seeing in Polkadot, easier access to sort of wallets, which is something very simple for a retail user on that front. And I think there has to be more of that transition between sort of the Web 2 space to Web 3, and making sure that security is obviously a fundamental pillar to the future, as well as the aspect of decentralization and privacy, which is key.
Yeah, once we get more security and people feel more confident, I'm sure we'll have more users for sure. Sota, I'll move to you. Like, tell us a little bit about, paint us a picture of like what the world could look like in the future if it was built on Polkadot, like all these applications.
Yeah, I think blockchain should be connected to realize Web 3.0. It is just like internet. Internet was independent, called intranet. But thanks to TCP/IP protocol, so we can talk to each other all over the world. So blockchain is, I would say, independent right now. So it takes time and it is expensive to transfer asset A from chain A to B, B to A. So Polkadot solved this. And Polkadot is going to be one of the fundamental protocol to realize Web 3.0 by connecting a lot of the blockchains. But the point is, we are not calling blockchain as a web. Blockchain is not a web. The Bitcoin is not web, right? Ethereum is not web. Polkadot protocol is not web. So we need an interface between blockchain and the user. And this is what we have to make in coming months. Polkadot is still very, very difficult for new people to use. The staking, governance, DeFi, NFT is still harder for general people. So what we have to do is to make better interface between Polkadot protocol, Parachain protocol, and users. So I think this year is very important year because it's bear market. It's always best time to build. And it is always really necessary to educate, build, and keep building a product, especially in a bear market.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll move to you next, Eric.
Sorry, can you repeat the question again? I was thinking about the answer, but I kind of forgot the question.
Yeah, no, all good. No, just like thinking about the future, like what would world look like if sort of more of these Web3 applications or just everything we see more prevalent on EVM right now? Like what would it look like if it was built on Polkadot and Parachains?
Yeah. Okay. I think I think Sota had a pretty good point about UI, the kind of the user experience of interacting between blockchains. One of the things that Parity is working on, I guess, promoting heavily and kind of making this ecosystem in a way is an ecosystem of user-friendly, for example, wallets, for example, right? Where you can have basically easy user onboarding into these wallets. And then these kind of parachains are all kind of, you could display all these parachains in an easy to use web app in a sense, as opposed to like what we see right now with Polkadot.js to some extent, right? Which is maybe developer friendly, but not retail user friendly per se. So I think in the future, it will be a lot easier to see a world in Polkadot where it's a lot more accessible to the average person, right? So basically there's just more tools available for these users to use the full power of Polkadot, streamlined in a way such that maybe they just don't have to understand blockchain as much as they do currently to be able to use the full feature set. And I think once kind of that happens, I think you're just going to see a lot more kind of activity, whether it's a cross-chain message or whether it's just more Polkadot wallets in general, more Polkadot accounts just being created.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And like you guys said, at least keeping the developers happy right now, and then ultimately we can get all the rest of the retail users. And yeah, lastly, Galen, I'll let you take us out on this panel. Tell us about what kind of world you envision, or yeah, some of the benefits of having a world that has more that's built on parachains or has more native interoperability.
Yeah, so to Sota and Eric's point, I think kind of the tools and interface would have to feel better rather than doing an app where you think of opening some channel to another blockchain or sending an XCM message somewhere else. I think you'd have to have an app where you're using an app and that app is doing things on a blockchain or maybe multiple blockchains. I think probably first it'll look like just feeling very seamless within the Polkadot ecosystem. That might be a little bit better tooling, a little bit more formed standards around that to match what some other ecosystems have. And then I think probably a second step, if it becomes very easy to connect outside apps to this, or blockchains from outside of the Polkadot ecosystem to bridge assets in, or to hook up an app where you aren't thinking too heavily about a wallet or anything else, and you just want to integrate something on Polkadot and plug into that ecosystem, I think we'll probably get another wave of users in.
100%. Thank you all for your time here. Really enjoyed speaking to you all. I think our audience learned a lot. I learned a lot, and yeah, really excited to build the future. And for all of our audience members, we're still bringing you more interviews here at Reimagine V13. So stick around. And I was your host, Roshan Mirajkar. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Roshan.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for watching.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.